When the dead would not rest, villagers came up with something unthinkable. They dug up their own family members, cut out and burned their hearts, and then mixed the ashes into water to drink. It happened in rural Romania, where the fear of the Strigoi turned grief into ritual. These were not stories told by candlelight to frighten children. They were desperate acts performed in the quiet corners of Eastern Europe, in places where belief and survival intertwined. The villagers who drank the dead were not monsters at all. They were common people trying to protect their families from what they thought was a curse. Why would anyone turn on their own dead? To answer that, we must enter a world where boundary between life and death was uncertain, and where faith in the unseen was stronger than any priest or doctor could dare to challenge. Welcome to Vortex Mythology, where we love to peel back the layers on characters, stories, and legends you thought you knew. Please do like and subscribe. Let's begin. The Strigoi were said to be souls that could not rest. In Romanian folklore, they rose from their graves at night to feed on the vitality of the living. A Strigoi could be the spirit of a jealous neighbor, a wronged lover, or even a relative whose burial rites were not performed well. This ancient idea was rooted in pre-Christian Slavic beliefs about the restless dead. Some people were thought to be born marked by fate, like a child with a call, red hair, or a birthmark might one day return as a Strigoi. Others became one after death if they had sinned, practiced sorcery, or died suddenly without confession of sin. To a village constantly threatened by famine, disease, and unexplained death, the notion of a spirit feeding on loved ones was both terrifying and strangely logical. When cows stopped giving milk, or a baby grew pale and weak, or someone even felt the slightest pressure on their chest at night, the whispers began. The dead had come back. This fear was not confined to legend. Records from the 18th to 19th centuries describe entire communities in Eastern Europe panicking over suspected vampires. Austrian officials stationed in the Balkans wrote reports of peasants digging up graves and burning corpses. They described these acts as superstition, but to the villagers, they were acts of defense. Did you know this fear and ritual practice persisted not even 20 years from now? That's right. The Romanian village of Maritino de Sus once again witnessed the horrors when 6 people exhumed the body of a man named Petre Toma, after his relatives claimed he visited them in their sleep. In 2004, they cut out his heart, burned it, and mixed the ashes in water. Did they pour the water away? No. They drank it to stop the spirit's attacks, believing this ritual to be a cure, not a crime. The fight against the Strigoi followed an order handed down by tradition. It began with suspicion that was often whispered among family members. Someone had grown ill or livestock had died. Soon after, a dream would confirm it. The dead had appeared, demanding food or simply watching them from nearby. At dawn, a small group of men would dig up the suspected grave. They worked in silence because noise could anger the spirit. When the coffin was opened, the signs of vampirism were sought. An unnaturally fresh body with reddish skin and flexible limbs. Sometimes even blood near the mouth. All this was proof that the corpse had fed. The next step was grim. The heart, that was seen as the seat of the undead's life force, was removed and burned on an iron spike or pitchfork. Its ashes were then mixed into water or wine. The family drank the mixture together, believing it would break the bond between the living and the Strigoi. This act shocks modern sensibilities, yet it was guided by faith and not cruelty. The villagers believed that this was necessary to defeat a force of death, and they could only do so by taking it inside themselves and transform it. The heart's ashes became medicine. Other protective acts existed too. Some drove wooden stakes through the corpse's chest. Others decapitated it or burned it face down to confuse its spirit. In certain regions, the heart was nailed to a church door or burned in the village square. But all served one purpose: to stop the Strigoi from walking again. Anthropologist Paul Barber notes in Vampires, Burial and Death that many of these signs had natural causes. Bodies sealed in coffins can appear preserved for months, and the blood from the mouth, that might be decomposition gases, but to the untrained eyes and hearts driven by faith, it's easier to come across as dark magic. The villagers' actions were not mindless superstition. They were a form of social medicine. In communities with little access to doctors, rituals provided meaning and control. If a plague struck or animals died, the ritual turned chaos into order. It gave people a way to act rather than despair. In symbolic terms, drinking the ashes was an attempt to internalize strength. The ashes represented the purified essence of the dead, and consuming them was thought to absorb that power to end the curse. Despite being born from fear rather than faith, it echoes the sacred act of communion among the villagers. The Strigoi also served a moral purpose. Stories about them warned against greed, betrayal, and neglect of family duties. The idea that the dead could rise to punish wrongdoing reinforced social norms. Every grave carried a lesson: to live rightly, or you may return restless. Beneath these beliefs were layers of guilt and grief. Many who were accused of being Strigoi had been difficult in life. A quarrelsome uncle, a jealous neighbour, a woman rumoured to practice charms. Their exhumation was both an exorcism and a reckoning. The ritual purged the living as much as it punished the dead. It also reflected a worldview in which the dead were not gone but present, watching over the household. Offerings of bread and water were still left at gravesides to keep them peaceful, but drastic measures were taken in case of disturbance. The villagers who drank the dead lived in a world where science and superstition coexisted uneasily. They were vampire hunters in the most intimate sense, yet also victims of fear and grief. Their rituals reveal how thin the border between faith and desperation can be. Centuries later, the idea of the Strigoi survives, transformed by literature and cinema into the vampire myth known worldwide. But the original fear was far more personal, a struggle to understand death in a landscape where it was constant and unexplained. Scholars who study these practices see them not as barbaric acts, but as reflections of deep cultural logic. The people of those Romanian villages sought to protect their homes the only way they knew how. They believed that by confronting the dead, they could bring peace to the living. To defeat the Strigoi, they took the dead into themselves. It was a ritual as haunting as the legend itself. A moment of fear becoming faith, and faith becoming survival. What drives people to face death with faith instead of fear? If you have similar questions about human history, don't forget to subscribe so you can learn more tales that blur the lines between the living and the lost. Thanks for watching Vortex Mythology, and until next time, stay curious.